All right, guys, this is going to be amazing. I guarantee it. All right, my guest is Cody Byrns. Now, Cody is an award-winning speaker and a #1 best-selling author. He's also the founder of the Cody Byrns Foundation for Burn Survivors. Now, this wasn't originally what Cody thought he'd be doing with his life. He was a youth pastor, an award-winning juggler. He was wowing audiences with this crazy ability to throw countless things up into the air and get them to fly around in a way that would make your head spin. Now, I know you know what juggling is, but seriously, Cody was amazing at it. But then in May of 2013, Cody's life was drastically changed. While he was stopped at a red light on a highway, Cody was rear-ended by a box truck. I mean, imagine one of those big moving trucks. This box truck failed to stop at highway speeds. He was considered dead on the scene, but even though he was pinned inside this crumpled vehicle where everyone just assumed no one could survive, some quick acting first responders saw his hand move and were able to extract him and save his life. Absolutely amazing. Now, Cody received many injuries that day, including severe burns to almost 40% of his body. After years of countless surgeries and rehabilitation, Cody has chosen to not allow his scars to keep him bound in bitterness and defeat, but instead he uses his story to uplift others. His vision is to help people live free from the bonds of scars, both physical and emotional, equipping others with the proper steps to walk out their past hurt and defeat and run towards their God-given potential. Love that, right? He is truly living the dream, think, do life. So I wanted to have him on. Cody, welcome to the show, buddy.
Oh man, thank you for having me. So glad to be here.
Yeah, man, this is great. Well, I can tell you, I love your story. When your team reached out, I was just like, what? Just digging into your story has just been blowing me away. And seriously, like serious juggler. Like I saw a video of you doing all sorts of crazy stuff, moving all sorts of stuff up in the air. Like I wouldn't even know how to start. I love that, man.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So like, let's go back in time here a little bit. Let's talk pre-May of 2013. And if I'm understanding correctly, youth pastor, juggler, kind of going all over, doing your thing with juggling and stuff like that. Tell us a little bit about that era, that season of your life.
Yeah, sure. Well, I grew up in Indiana, the southern part of the state. I now live in Tampa, Florida. I had to move to a little bit of a warmer place.
Exactly.
But, I love it. I mean,
winters, my friend. Nicer winters. I love it.
It's been a good move.
Yeah.
But so I grew up in southern Indiana. I grew up right in the middle of a cornfield.
Wow.
You know that saying, the children of the corn, or the movie or whatever it was?
Oh yeah.
That was reality.
You lived that. Yeah, right? That growing up in Iowa, that movie had extra anybody that was in the Midwest. Like what?
So you can relate to that. Most definitely. Yeah. So, but I had a wild imagination. I wasn't one of those kids that played sports and did all these things because I really fell in love with juggling and entertaining. And a lot of that came from my parents taking me to the circus as a little boy. And, I was like, oh my gosh, I've seen the juggler there. And I was like, I want to do that.
Yeah.
And so every chance I could, I would practice until, I became the world's greatest juggler, according to my mother. And
hey, always trust mom.
That's
Absolutely.
right.
Any endorsement from mom, you can take to the bank. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, hey, she talked me up, and so I taught myself how to juggle 3 balls, and eventually down through the years, I really grew, and I juggled like from 3 balls to 7 balls, and I was doing 8 hoops and 5 flaming torches, you name it. And so along with, after high school, I should say, I went to ministry school, got my pastoral credentials, and then, the juggling and everything kind of connected really well with the kids, obviously. So along with being a kids pastor, I got to do those things, but I also got to travel around the country and do different types of events. I did a few circus events. I never toured with a show, but I got what they would call spot dates. You fly out, do a show for a weekend, and you fly back home. And so,
which I would think would be the best way to do the circus. Like,
exactly.
I don't know about you, but to me, that'd be the only way I do the circus. Right?
It is the way to do it.
Home. Thanks very much. Yeah.
If you're going to do it, those were the best gigs, and they paid the best, in my opinion. And so, life was just going great. And, I was a kids pastor for 4 years, and I was 23 in May of 2013. Wow. Just gotten back from doing some mission work in Cuba, and got to teach some of the leaders over there to juggling. And different things. It was a blast. Life was going great. And then, yeah, as you kind of said in the intro, I was stopped at a red light on the highway, and I was hit by a refrigerator box truck that was going full highway speed, 60 to 65 miles per hour, showed no signs of stopping. It hit my vehicle, and then my car blew up into flames. And so when the first responders came to the scene, just by the looks of it, they knew this is a
Yeah.
fatality. And so they had done called the coroner and everything. It's
Oh, wow.
crazy.
That's amazing. Well, I know I got to see some photos of the accident. I think it was on your website, and it's like how anybody survived from that vehicle's insane. And then, but literally, somebody saw your hand move. A first responder saw your hand move, and they realized, oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah. And, it was crazy. And the sheriff's department took hundreds of photos, and some of those are available on my website, and they're out there. But it's just to look back at some of those images, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, it really is amazing that I've survived that. And
Right.
and I was in a Dodge Durango at the time. And so, they're kind of a bigger vehicle,
Yeah.
but my
Right.
seat was the only seat that was there. And it was hardly even there. But I mean, it was squashed up like an accordion. They didn't know what I was driving. So it took them a good hour to get me out of that thing.
No way.
It was nuts. They got the jaw. And they said I was talking. And they said I told them who I was, where I worked, and everything. But I don't remember none of that. Thank God.
Really?
I don't remember
Yeah.
the
Right.
wreck. I just remember driving. And then 3 weeks later, I remember waking up in the hospital.
Yeah, because you then went into a coma once they got you helicopter to major hospital, all of that, right? You went into a
Yes.
coma and were out.
They put me out. They life flighted me to a hospital in Evansville, Indiana, which they then discovered, the severe burns. So they redirected me to Indianapolis to the burn unit, and there I was put into a coma on life support for 3 weeks. Had the severe burn injuries, burnt down to bone and muscle, 40%.
Jeez.
I had broken vertebrae, torn ligaments, you name it. And I mean, my family has their side of the story that was quite traumatizing on their end, but I don't remember none of it. I just
Right.
remember waking up 3 weeks later, and then to only be told what had happened, and I still didn't fully understand the big picture of what
Sure.
took place until just a few weeks after that.
Wow.
It was a wild roller coaster
I
ride.
bet. I bet. And I know with burns, the recovery is not immediate. This is a long-term process to heal up and get any kind of life back.
Yes, yeah, and it is so and I think many burn survivors would say that the initial injury is painful, but I think it's the aftermath that is the most painful. The surgeries, I had so many surgeries. I was in the burn unit for 2.5 months, and I
Wow.
had to go to a rehabilitation center being monitored by nurses and doctors 24/7. Had to relearn to walk, use my hands, all the basics, and then I had more surgeries after that, and I went to outpatient rehab for another 2-3 years straight.
Jeez.
And so it was a long way coming. And there's a lot of survivors that's their story is even more lengthy
Right.
than mine, and it is a very painful experience in so many ways.
Well, and I know if I'm understanding part of your story too, was that at one point they thought you might lose some fingers, which then would have taken your ability to juggle completely away. And it sounds like, if I'm understanding it, your family kind of had to make a stand, or you guys decided to try something else or to keep going.
That is correct. Yeah, my mother remembers the story of the surgeons coming to her because, like I said, being burnt down to bone and muscle, my hands were severely burned, and so my fingers, the ligaments or whatever causes them to move around, those had been severely damaged. And so they said, "Yeah, we're going to have to more than likely amputate his fingers."
Uh,
And my family said, "Do whatever you can to save him. He juggles." And of course, you could imagine the surgeon's face. They're probably like, "You're kidding me? He juggles? What the heck?" And so,
Did you didn't just say juggle. You said
yeah,
juggle?
you
Okay.
said juggling, right? Really? Oh,
People do
bless his
that? Like
heart.
what?
Oh gosh.
But it
Yeah,
matters, right? It
it
absolutely matters.
mattered to me. I mean, that was my thing, and I had become known, not only in the ministry world as being a kids pastor, but also in the entertainment world. I got to
Yeah.
speak at conferences and teach other entertainers how to juggle. That was something that I was really, my name was getting known for. And so they did everything they could. They pinned them, and it was torture. and they did many, many surgeries, and I went through multiple rehab, trying to get them to bend, but they don't have the mobility that they used to. But, I can get the job done. So I can still juggle. I cannot juggle as good as I used to,
Sure.
but considering my injuries, I do a pretty darn good job.
I can tell you juggle way better than I do. Like, oh my gosh, there's video on your site, and it's amazing what you're still doing. Ironically, at least, I saw you were throwing some fire around at one point. I'm like, are you kidding me?
I haven't learned my lesson with fire.
That's right. Or you're saying I'm taking it all the way.
That's right, because I juggled fire since I was, oh my gosh, I think I got my first set of torches. I was probably 12 years old. And I started playing around with it, and I juggled fire for years. Not once burned myself.
Really?
So, I was like, you know what? I'm going to freaking do this. I didn't burn myself.
Right.
I was in the.
I'm going to show it. I love it.
That's right.
So, obviously your case, your story is incredible. It's amazing. But I also know that you've now, you've written a best-selling book, which really, tells your story. But what I love about it is there are so many important metaphors, so many lessons that you've learned that we can all kind of take from, whether we've had some sort of catastrophic event or not. So, I mean, even the title of your book, remind me of the title. I have it written down, but now I'm like,
It's all good. It's Scar Release, breaking free of yesterday's troubles.
I love it. So, with that, like, what are some of the things you would say you've learned, especially, going after a dream and then obviously getting thrown an incredible curveball? What are some of those things that you're learning?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. Whenever I came out of life support, my family was there, and my mother, I remember this vividly. She said to me, Cody, she said, do not lose sight of your vision. And, because before all this happened, I had a vision to give hope to people, whether that be through being in children's ministry, juggling, traveling. I had always had a vision to reach thousands. That vision has grown to reach millions at this point. Yeah. But those words, don't lose sight of your vision. And through it all, I had to remind myself of what mattered the most in life. And, recognizing that, life is short. I was 23. Life very well could have ended for me.
Right.
I'm blessed and fortunate to be here today. But there are others that aren't so fortunate. And so you recognize the gifts and the blessings of today. And I had to understand that no matter how much I would like to change what happened to me, I couldn't. Yeah. I had to embrace my current reality. I cannot change the past, but I can change my today and make the most of my today. And I think that was the biggest turning point for me, and recognizing, all right, this is now part of who I am.
Yeah.
So how am I going to use my story now to give hope to others, to keep sight of that vision?
That's awesome. And it is so, so powerful. I think it's something we can all be learning from, to be able to say, all right, everything in our life may not be exactly as we hoped it would be or want it to be, but to be able to say, all right, this is what it is. So it doesn't have to remain this way, or I can continue to move forward, and all things are possible. So with that being said, what would you say? I think that, it sounds like to me, is kind of that first step of being able to kind of recognize your situation and then be able to moving forward. But I know part of this process is also releasing the past, yes. Right? Like talk with us about that. 'Cause especially in your case, obviously, there's people that have faced this kind of thing and then they wound up being bitter and, and that's just, it destroyed their life more than the catastrophic event that they might've, been facing. So how did you do that? How did you let go of that past?
That's so good. Well, I think, whenever I'm doing speaking engagements, I talk about the 4 steps: embracing your current reality. Number 2, take control of your reality. And there's so many points under that. I mean, gaining a fresh perspective is one of the ways you can do it. And, my book is it's titled Scar Release. Scar Release is based after a surgical procedure where the surgeons go in and they cut the scar at its root to allow you to be mobile again. As a burn survivor, I have contracture scars. These scars contracted to the point, for example, with my hand, they contracted to where I couldn't even hold on to a bottle of water because the scars had limited that mobility to do so. Yeah. And so the surgeons went in, They released the scars. And so I tell people, a scar release doesn't remove the appearance of a scar. It allows the mobility to move with the scar.
Mm.
And so, like I said, we cannot change what happened to us, but we have to gain that fresh perspective of, okay, this is now part of who I am. What do I need to do in moving forward? Another big part with me was forgiveness. I had to forgive the one that, was in that truck that day, not paying attention. Whatever he was doing, I still to this day do not know, but I had to practice forgiveness. And forgiveness is one of those steps that we have to make for ourselves in order for us to move on. And I also say, get a game plan, get a game plan that's going to help you get to the other side. For my physical health, it didn't come overnight. I had to take some not so easy steps, but I eventually got there. And another big one is finding mentors and reminding yourself of why you want to get better. Why do I want to overcome this experience? And mine was, I knew that my life wasn't revolving around me. I wanted to give hope to others.
Yeah.
So that's step 2.
I love it.
I'll pause there. And if you,
I love it, man. That's great. Well, I'm so glad that this interview is going to be 4 hours long, because I know we can fill up every minute of it. I want to go back though, because I think, embrace the reality, control your reality to the best of your ability, forgiveness, game plan, finding mentors, getting clear on your why. But I want to go back to the middle there in the forgiveness, because I think a lot of people would hear your story. And I mean, hey, we're all human, right? And the thought of, especially as you look around and go, how many distracted drivers are out there right now? All these things, like how easy it would be to hold on to, again, bitterness, lack of forgiveness to this individual. Talk us through that a little bit, because I think forgiveness is such a huge part of this life that we live, right? And forgiveness is different than forgetting. But talk us through that part of the journey for you, because I know some people would, heck, get that person's name, let's destroy them, all of that. But what was that for you?
It was very difficult. In the beginning, I obviously didn't have a whole lot of time to think about it because I was recovering so much. But my family, on the other end, they were furious. They dealt with it in so many different ways. And they're like, if that driver only knew the hell that you had to go through and you're going through. And, and I had to get to that point, like I said, I had those days where, I'm like, okay, I forgive the man, but I sure heck, I want to slap him. but I'm
going to show you some forgiveness.
That's right. But, and I tell people, I've still never talked to this man. I would someday love to. And I think there's a powerful story that is awaiting to be, to come into fulfillment. And I would love to someday give him a big hug and just, because I had to, coming from a faith background.
Yeah.
That is a big part of what really helped me in this process. Obviously, not everybody is in that, but I had to practice that forgiveness, because I think about my life, how many times have I needed forgiveness for doing something? And, I don't think this individual set out to hurt me. I don't think that was their plan. Mistakes happen. Right. And, I had to just embrace it. And like I said, and you did mention, forgiveness is different than forgetting. I will never forget it, because I now live with these scars every day of my life. People's always asking me, what happened to you? And so I'm always sharing my story. So then I think it boils down to my heart, and only God knows my heart and knows that I've truly forgiven this man. And it had to become a practice where every day I was like, okay, I'm forgiving this man because I want to get better.
Yeah.
I'm moving on with my life. So I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, for sure. No, I appreciate that. It's very real and honest. And I appreciate that, because I do think, forgiveness, on the other side, bitterness is one of those things that just kind of sneaks in. And at least in my case, maybe you're probably a lot healthier than I am, but like in my case, like bitterness, at least initially, almost feels good, right? Like you feel justified in it. It almost feels powerful, but then it's what do they say? Bitterness is the poison we drink in order to try to kill someone else, right? It's that thing that starts to seep in, and then it starts to play into everything in our life. And I think, bitterness is one of those that can all of a sudden make your whole life gray, and you don't even know necessarily what it was. You know, you can say it was a particular person or a particular event, but it's that bitterness. And so forgiveness is so powerful, but it's not necessarily easy. And I think, to
Oh,
your
no.
point, it's a daily decision, as opposed to going, well, I said it once. It
Yeah.
should just take
Yeah.
now, right? Like I should be done with it, right?
It
So
is so true. It is a daily reminder that we have to remind ourselves of, because bitterness, and I think bitterness, stems from, it all has a root. I think, there's a saying, hurt people. And if
yep,
we aren't
yep,
careful, if we're not adjusting ourselves, then if we don't release ourselves from the past, the scars that we've encountered through the past will limit us in our daily life, but they can also affect others around us, our
yeah.
family, our children, our co-workers, whatever it may be. So it's important that we try to address those things and do some self-examination.
Yeah, for sure. Because it is, I think a lot of times that bitterness can kind of hide underneath the radar, and again, almost feel like a good feeling initially, but then just start to taint everything else. And what Dream Think Do, we're always talking about concepts that help people dream bigger, think better, and do more of what they were put on the planet to do. And, this is a subject that comes up from time to time. And I think some people might think, well, what does that have to do with goal attainment? What does that have to go with going after your dreams? But it's one of those that if you pursue dreams and goals, but you don't have joy in your life, like, is it really, what's it all about? Right. Like, we want to live that life we were put on the planet to do. And that bitterness can just be a joy stealer. So I love it. Now for you, I know one of the other big things though, too, is that as people pursue dreams and goals, obviously people get thrown curveballs, but I think sometimes that's also one of those that frustration can kind of sneak in. Would you say you were an optimistic person, like naturally optimistic before the accident?
Um, yes and no.
Yeah.
It was a mixture of both. Before the accident, life was going great. As a young man, I obviously had difficulties like anybody, but it wasn't nowhere near to this extent.
Right. Yeah.
And then, you're thrown this tremendous curveball, and then you're really put to the test.
Yeah.
And your mindset and where you're going. And I was a kids minister traveling the country, encouraging people. And, when rubber hits the road, something like this happens, you got to start practicing what you preach.
Right.
And so I had to really quickly start putting myself in that mindset of, okay, Cody, how are you going to react to this? How are you going to let it affect you? And I was surrounded by a great community that people were praying for me, encouraging me. So I think that played a very important part
Absolutely.
in getting me in the right mindset to move on.
Yeah. Yeah. But it sounds like you still had to choose it. Like, there are some people,
Absolutely.
like I'm pretty optimistic, but I would even say there are people who are annoyingly optimistic. Like, they don't have to choose it. It's just a part of their DNA. And I do
Positive about everything. Just shut up. Just shut up.
Exactly. Rainbows, butterflies, little ponies. That's
I
fine,
don't know what
right?
world
Like,
you're living in.
get better at it, but still there are just some days, certain seasons that we just
Oh,
use it. And that's one of the things I wondered about for you is, like, what are some of the ways that you've, especially on those days where that might be, more difficult than others. Maybe it was a day where you were facing surgery, or maybe it was a tough day in recovery or whatever. What's something you did to kind of help yourself either remember the messages you said before, or set a new course on some of that stuff? What's something you did to help keep going?
well, I certainly had dealt with depression, and I had my moments, and my faith was tested. And I think just being in constant contact with mentors and reminding myself of the goal, of the ultimate vision that I wanted to achieve. And then also with the social media, my family had created a Facebook page, and I had seen where people was already being encouraged by my story and by me just getting up and being alive. And I seen, okay, this is already making a difference, and I haven't fully gotten out of this. So that encouraged me. And I think there was some powerful quotes given to me by mentors. As far as faith, some people may wonder, well, why are you still believing in God and so forth? One of my mentors, his name is Dave Reaver. He served in Vietnam, burn survivor. Have high respect for the man. I love him. Talked with him over the telephone. He shared with me his story and how he dealt with depression, and he even battled suicide and things for years.
Wow.
He was in the military, went to throw a hand grenade. A sniper shot it before he could release it, and it blew up all over him.
Wow.
And so he was on TV doing an interview, and the lady was talking with him, and she said, "Dave, you know why God allowed this to happen to you?" And he said, "No, I don't. I don't know why." And she said, "Dave, God did not do this to you, but he allowed it to happen because he could trust you with the scars." And that statement changed his entire life, and he's been able to help millions of people around the world. So as he was sharing that story with me, I began to connect the dots and see that within my own life. And I thought to myself, could it be that I've been trusted with a story, with these scars, to make a difference in the world? Ooh. And so it's that shift. And just, if I have to put up Post-it notes around the house, Cody, you're going to get through it. My family encouraging, mentors, people praying, listening to inspirational podcasts, videos, as a Christian, going to church, motivational messages, anything that can help you in that moment. And I tell you, it makes a difference. What you feed yourself is what you become.
Yep.
And I wanted to become all that I ever dreamed of. I wanted to help millions of people. I knew that direction. And so I put myself into an environment to where I had no other choice but to grow and bring out the positive of the situation.
I love that. And it's so true. People say, "Oh gosh, how do you stay so inspired?" And it's like, I love the quote. I'm probably going to butcher it, but I'll paraphrase what Zig Ziglar talked about. Cause somebody said, "Well, I don't really believe in motivational things because, you do something, you're motivated for a short period of time and then it goes away." And he's like, "Well, you probably heard this," but he talked about, well, so does showering. Just because I shower and I need to shower the next day doesn't mean that I'm not going to do it. He's like, it just means that it's imperative that I do, and it is. Yeah. It's like choosing those ways where we can continue to be inspired, because there are things conspiring to keep us unmotivated, right? Those things that are trying to get us off track. So we have to choose those things, and then it makes all the difference. So I've got a couple last questions. We're going to take a quick break, hear from our sponsor quick, and then we'll wrap this thing up.
All right.
All right. So I love it. And I so appreciate you shooting straight with us too. It's funny, sometimes you interview somebody and they don't want to almost admit that, they actually need the material they've just written too, like they're above it. So I wrote it for everyone else. And I love the fact that you're like, heck no, I wrote it because I need it. Right.
Yeah.
What would you say, what else, as far as letting go, forgiveness is one of those things, but what else gets in the way of us, moving towards those dreams? What's something that you've seen, especially as you're helping more and more people? What would you say is something that gets in the way, and maybe something else that we need to let go of?
Oh my goodness.
Right.
Well, there's so many things. I mean, as far as in relating to scars, I mean, you talk about forgiveness. That's a powerful thing. And I think it's just that retraining. I don't really quite know how to answer that one.
Yeah.
Been asked that directly.
See, that's what I do, man. I just try to ask weird questions. It makes me an annoying person, but it's kind of fun for a podcast, right?
I think you just need to understand that you're not alone in whatever you're going through. And also, on that road to recovery, trust the process and be persistent, and realize that things aren't always going to turn out the way you planned. I had many surgeries on my fingers hoping that I'd regain that mobility, but you know what? I didn't. So I had to adapt to that. And so I had to move on, trust the process. Yeah, it threw me a curveball, but I'm still heading in that direction. Yeah. And I think that's so important. And, finding those lessons through the difficult moments, that's because anything, it's like if you're going to do something and you don't accomplish it, it's not a failure. Just look at the lessons you can learn through that experience.
Yep.
And then, I talk about being confidently you, and just be yourself and rock what you got. Yeah. I tell people, like I said, I can't juggle as good as I used to, but I rock what I can do. I make the most of myself. And, I've also got a Byrns Foundation I'm giving to others. And that right there is just, I love it. I'm fulfilling my purpose.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing? Because it is an iteration of what you had set out prior to the accident, right? Like, it's what you're doing is now, I think, even more expansive than what you were doing before. But it's that whole thing of you took your mom's advice, right? You stayed true to it and kind of found a new way to walk it out. But I think trust in the process is important. I think we live in a crock pot world when we want microwave speed, right? Like that's so much of what life is. It does take time, and we have to take those steps day in and day out and be fully present in that. So I love it. All right. So I always ask for one last, what we call our word of wisdom, kind of one last pearl that we offer everybody. And I know, you had said you got motivational quotes and different things that inspire you. What's one last quote or, inspirational thought that helps you keep moving forward?
Yeah, there's and I don't know who it was by, but one of my other mentors, Sean Stevenson, he had given me this, and it's I've got a big thing hanging up on my wall, so I'm going
I
to
love
read
it.
it. The
Yeah.
key to success is playing the hand that you were dealt like it was the hand that you wanted, and I think that right there, that just hits it on the
Read
head.
that again. I love that.
The key to success is playing the hand you were dealt like it was the hand that you wanted.
That is awesome. I'm taking that to the
Mic
bank,
drop.
man. Yeah, exactly. Kaboom. I wish we did special effects. That is awesome. All right. Well, Cody, how can people find out more about you? Where can they find you on the World Wide Webs?
Yes. Well, it's CodyByrns.com. My last name is actually spelled with a Y instead of a U. So it's CodyByrns.com/DTD, standing for this podcast right here.
Booyah. I love it.
So,
That is
yeah,
awesome.
baby.
Go check them out and definitely grab a copy of this book. It's called Scar Release: Breaking Free of Yesterday's Troubles. Cody Byrns, thanks so much for doing what you do, and thanks for being on Dream Think Do.
Oh, man. Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.